term orogenesis, a combination of oro, relating to mountains, and genesis, denoting an origin or development, coined through geologic discussions of physical mountain formation. However, mountains not only undergo physical orogenesis, but social, political, and economic orogeneses as well. For Mount Taranaki, located in Aotearoa, New Zealand, its current oro-political figuring may be easier to discern than most. Its contested construction has specific moments of emergence, from Te Puna or ancestor, to crown spoils of war, to national park, and currently granted living personhood. As a political and ideological marker, its bounding has manifested visually in stark distinctions on the landscape between ecotone realities of native bush and English pasture. This paper explores Taranaki's multiple orogeneses and employs theories of granular geographies towards disrupting its oro-imaginary as a bounded object. By following the flows of streams, sediments, and historical events, we place ongoing dispossession by settler colonial territorialization practices and the larger politics of containing nature within the context of indigenous Maori relations from mountain to sea. While mountains may seem like fairly stable objects, physically and conceptually, spatially and temporally, there are many theoretical inquiries and practical cases that undermine such an understanding. The way we may think about solid ground can be upended at particular scales and within specific practices. So even the stability of something as august and colossal as a mountain can have its objectness brought into question when material and social constructs intersect in ways that circulate, relocate, or circumnavigate what might normatively be considered stable and bounded figures. Excesses or porosity introduce openings for refiguring previous categorizations. This may manifest in challenging the meaning of mountainness, disputing definitions based in metrics and variables, refuting the bounding of mountains, or confronting who gets to make such distinctions. The volatility of a volcano is a clear example of the rapid and violent physical changeability of a mountain form, and geographic explorations of volcanoes upend much of the fixed ideas of the mountain category. But beyond volcanism, imposed mountain boundaries are always exceeded by hydrological and biogeochemical connections, which move materials beyond the slopes, escaping their constructed spatialities. Of course, a mountain is not only a material figure. Soils, rocks, and landscapes, as well as flora, fauna, and waterways, have various relationalities with social and political constructions of identity, community, and nation, often in ways aligned to dominant power structures. In particular, state-building projects have enrolled physical materialities and landscape ideologies to center or bound a nation. River borders, mountain centers, even animal symbols act as ways to tether national ideologies with living landscapes and states' control over space. Mountains in particular have been useful features, imagined as ramparts on borders or as backbones within the body of a nation-state. This means disagreements over what constitutes a mountain, as opposed to a hill or dell, controversies over their exact or purported true height, or broader epistemological debates about where a mountain ends, are all of great importance to state control and resistance to it. The Taranaki region is known for its distinctive stratovolcano reaching over 2,500 meters above sea level, forming a near-perfect isosceles cone. This area is also known for its rolling green dairy pastures, incredible surf breaks, and beautiful black sand beaches. The black sands off Taranaki Bight contain high concentrations of iron. Their dark color and magnetic properties signify the coveted ore within, targeted for a controversial seabed mining project. There is much history of Taranaki that has been told from a volcanological perspective. Long before Western academics analyzed the stratigraphy of its lava flows, or tidal-magnetite deposits, nearby Maori tribes have passed down stories of powerful volcanic transformation and the changing terrain through the figure of Taranaki. After losing the love of the beautiful volcanic Mount Pihangi to Mount Tongariro, Taranaki raged a path west, leaving a trench in his wake. Filling with his tears, this created the Wanganui River Basin. This is Taranaki's tumultuous and lovelorn volcanic orogenesis. Much later, a subsequent orogenesis occurred. When sailing around Taranaki Bight in 1770, Captain Cook saw the snow-covered peak. He designated it Mount Egmont, after his earl patron, without ever stepping foot in the region. Later, the Europeans did come ashore. From 1840, colonial settlers sought farmland across Aotearoa. The ring plains of volcanic debris surrounding Taranaki engender rich, fertile soils. Refusal by iwi, or tribes, to sell the lands they lived on led to the settler government war on these Maori, making Taranaki a war zone in the 1860s. After the Taranaki land wars, the mountain was confiscated by the government using the 1865 New Zealand Settlements Act. This transferred land from rebelling iwi to military settlers for farming, which was subsequently cleared. This act was both a punishment for Maori that would not comply, as well as prevented the lush forest from being used again as their ally in battle. Native bush in the region was some of the thickest in Aotearoa, and while Maori had cleared small areas, it was the arrival of European settlers that began the near-complete devastation of Taranaki's ring plain forests. In 1875, the local settler government declared some protections, creating a circle 20 miles around as the Egmont Forest Reserve. Then, a few years later, the Land Act was used to preserve 72,000 acres as crown land in the shape of a circle with a 6-mile radius from the summit. From then on, the boundary of the reserve was transformed from a mathematical conjecture into ring-shaped bifurcation carved into the landscape. The encircled mountain was officially designated as Egmont National Park in 1900. The interior was preserved as nature, and the exterior was burned, settled, and fashioned as English countryside. As Deladora argues, quote, "In order to intervene, humans had to think of themselves as separate from nature. They had to turn mountains into objects." End quote. Refiguring Taranaki's status as a national park, the 1978 Mount Egmont Vesting Act was proposed to provide for the symbolic return of the mountain to the 8 Taranaki iwi. And it was solely symbolic, as it states, quote, "The mountain shall be formally transferred to the Taranaki Maori Trust Board in order that it may be given back to the Crown for the purposes of a national park, as a free gift and as a symbol of love to all the people of New Zealand." Within the span of a sentence, Taranaki is restored to Maori authority and returned to the Crown. Not long after, the New Zealand Geographic Board took up the project of looking at the official name of the mountain. Some proponents wanting to keep Cook's designation of Egmont alleged any change as anti-European racism that would lead to racial strife in the country. The lands minister finally decided to keep both, Egmont and Taranaki, formerly in that order. Dual place names proliferated after this diplomatically doubled toponym. Yet, in late 2019, the 8 Taranaki iwi came to a deal with the Crown for the name to be recognized solely as Taranaki Maunga, officially renaming the park as well. Despite the name change, the mountain and its ring plain remain in their dueling colonial figurations of natural and human landscapes on either side of the line. In the past 2 decades, there has been various movements towards granting rights to nature. Ecuador was the first to manifest it through their constitution, recognizing the rights of Pachamama, or Mother Earth, in 2008. India granted legal personhood to the Ganges and Yamuna rivers in 2017. Around the world, including Bangladesh, Bolivia, Colombia, Uganda, and the United States, Rivers, forests, glaciers, and mountains are being recognized as having person-like rights, shifting the preponderance of Western legal frameworks from ownership of nature to some recognition of a social relationship with land that pre-exists property. However, many people's relationships with living landscape take other forms, and some have challenged the international movement of rights of nature as the grafting of place-specific indigenous worldviews onto others, the globalizing of specific relations to living landscapes. Even more contentious is that the recognition of rights of the land is still a refusal of land return. As Coombs explains, such models, quote, discursively control, hegemonize, and silence decades of activism that sought indigenous autonomy and repatriation of resources, end quote. Taranaki Maunga is the third geographic feature in Aotearoa to receive legal personality, after the Te Urewera Fern Forest in 2014, and in 2017, the Wanganui River. These shifts seem to move away from the national park status, representing the Western ideal of wilderness as nature apart from social and political spheres, and it attempts to incorporate indigenous knowledges and practices of kinship and relationality. Yet these legal person landscapes sit within a larger framework of Western ontologies, bureaucracies, markets, and property regimes. A system that, while often capitalizing on excesses and flows, is also constructed around discrete, bounded objects, enclosing and dividing relational subjects, categorically partitioning the natural from social, physical from biological, and land from sea. So while Taranaki Maunga is recognized as having sovereignty over itself, rendered through representatives from iwi and the Crown, it still sits within the bounds of the park. The curators of a permanent exhibit at the Pukeariki Museum in New Plymouth, titled Taranaki Naturally, ask the question, how do you define where a mountain begins and ends? Taranaki Maori see their mountain as a sacred ancestor who provides spiritual and physical sustenance. The summit is his tapu, sacred head, and the forests are his clothes, and he extends beyond land and into the sea. This relational understanding figures Taranaki Maunga as living and indivisible, both words used to describe the mountain in the documentation of its living personhood. Yet the question of where the mountain ends ripples out to considerations of development downstream. Focusing on the relationality from mountain to sea through granular geographies allows us, as Jameson argues, to, quote, connect the landscapes that sand progresses through as it changes state throughout its commodification, end quote. For the offshore iron-rich sands targeted by Trans-Tasman Resources, they originate from Taranaki Maunga, forged in its volcanic viscera. Yet they move through multiple jurisdictions on their way from the peak to the sea floor. Within the context of long-standing disputes over settler expropriation of tribal tenure and the ongoing controversy over nationalization of the foreshore, this sand exhibits geontological tensions between the entangled natures of life and not life, the oropolitics of a mountain figure, and the mobility of granular bodies. Recognizing the de-animation of itinerant grains as they are transported downstream, flowing from living mountain into vital commodity, necessitates a re-spatialization of Taranaki Maunga, connecting it to the broader living worlds of land and sea, towards undoing some of the violence of dividing landscapes and removing nature from the sociocultural domain.